Hello and welcome to the sixth part in this Talos Enablement series. We're going to be talking here about uh, a bit more advanced topics. We're going to be talking about how you customize Talos. There's a couple of different ways you can customize Talos. We're going to be talking about orchestration, how you can customize orchestration artifacts, um, how a Jenkins job breaks down, what the anatomy of it is, and how you go about creating a custom Jenkins job. And then we're going to look at toolkits, and we're going to look at creating custom orchestration libraries, custom activities, and custom templates. So a Jenkins job is simply the name given to a sequence of steps orchestrated by Jenkins. And it consists of uh, some project details, a name and description, some build information, whether the build is parameterized, whether you should be able to execute concurrent builds together, and some trigger information. So what happens after the project is built? Should this build periodically as part of a schedule? And then also some build steps. Now the build steps are the actual steps that are going to be executed in order to complete whatever uh, whatever you need to complete by the job. So all of these are Jenkins jobs. All of these have been created by Talos. So, but you can create your own. So if you just click new item in Jenkins, then you get to create your own. It can either be a freestyle project where uh, there is there's no bounds to it. You can create whatever activities you like. Um, you can create a Talos project specifically, and that will allow you to set an environment on which this will execute. So an environment and middleware drop down will appear, and you'll be able to run Talos activities. And that's mainly what we're going to be using. So yeah, the difference between a freestyle project and a Talos project is the environment details here and the fact that you can run the Talos activity steps. Those wouldn't be available in a freestyle project. So out of the box, Talos libraries mainly use Talos steps, but you can add steps of any type within Jenkins. So there's a few that are worth considering. Um, this first one here, conditional step, is it's a logic step. So it says if this then that basically. And you can either have a single conditional step or chain multiple conditional steps together. It's not the best place to put business logic, but if you do need a logical evaluation to occur, then you can do that. You can use batch or shell commands, which will basically just execute the command that you type within that box as the user running Jenkins at the command line. You can use Ant and Maven, or you can call other projects. So you can call another Jenkins job as part of your sequence of steps. And if you have the right Jenkins plugin installed, any other integration you see fit to use. So this is a couple of examples of those kind of build steps. At the top here, execute shell. That's literally just a shell command that you type into that box. On the left-hand side here, triggering call builds on other projects. So we're triggering that dev-was855 underscore build project, and that will just execute in line with the other steps. And below that, this is a Talos activity step. So we can select toolkit, we can select the activity to run, the run mode, provide any arguments that need to be provided, and specify where to run that activity. And on the right-hand side, this is a conditional step. So we're looking for whether a particular file exists, and if it does, then executing this builder, the shell builder. So what's a library and what's a project then? So libraries are used by Talos. They are they're never invoked directly. They're only ever referenced by projects. Projects are the Jenkins jobs that are actually executed. So they're the ones that you click play on, and they will contain a series of steps, some of which will be callouts to libraries. Um, but they're the ones that are intended to be used by to be launched by users. So how are the orchestration libraries created by Talos? Well, the default libraries for the library creation for the job creation are held the in each individual toolkit, in the toolkit directory, in the orchestration folder, and then there's a folder underneath that for every orchestration engine type, so Jenkins, Ansible, UCD, and then a libraries product under there, and then a product. So the product folder contains all of the libraries that have been created by Tech Data. They're owned by Talos. They're managed by Talos, and they're held in an XML format in exactly the same way as they are on the target orchestration system. So this is the contents of the build was cell library XML. So build was cell library XML is Talos's template for building a WAS cell. This is the sequence of steps that are going to be executed. And on the right-hand side here, the config XML within Jenkins jobs build WebSphere cell. So it's in a slightly different format. One is formatted nicely so you can see those XML elements. The other is not quite so nice, but you might just have to trust me that they're identical files. So these are the values of the job details. So in the top section here, under the project action, we have description, we have properties, we have name, and these all map directly to the elements on the right-hand side, the build information and the project details. Now below that, in the builders section, are each one of the steps. So each one of these XML stanzas here that contains an environment, a middleware, a toolkit, an activity, a run mode, an argument, and a run on remote Boolean value. These map directly to each of the values of these Talos activities. So you might notice that there's two directories under orchestration Jenkins libraries. There is product, which contains the libraries that are put there by Talos. They're managed by Talos. They're created as what we see as the perfect way to do it. Custom is just an opportunity for a user, if they have custom needs or they see a better way of doing things, they can put their own files there and it will use those libraries instead of the product ones. So it's empty by default, and to create a custom version, you simply copy the file from the product folder into the custom folder, modify it accordingly, and if it finds a file with the same name in custom, then it will override the product version. So if you modify a project, it will retain those changes. So the top level projects that you have, um, the dev-was855 build project that executes, um, you can modify those projects and they won't change because they were created once, they're never going to be overwritten. So for example, if you wish to do that, you can go into the configure job, for example, and you could add a step which will go and grab the latest version of your application from the repository using, I don't know, Git or SVN plugin, or simply copy it from a known location. And you could add that as a step to occur before any of the configure happens, and then you know that when the job executes, then the right version of the application will be there. If you wish to modify a library, so these are Jenkins jobs that are called by projects. Um, so for example, if you have another way of uninstalling your 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 middleware runtimes from your servers. You have a script that just goes and deletes everything quickly, and you don't need to go through that uninstall process. You could remove all the uninstall steps, all the stop and uninstall steps from the build out job. So you can do this in Jenkins, but it might be overwritten at a later stage because these are libraries. They're sometimes regenerated from Talos. So what we'd have to do is move this into a custom library. So you can either remove the steps from the XML file if you're comfortable with an XML and you can see where those stanzas are and you're comfortable removing those, that's fine. You can do that directly within the XML, or you can go and make those changes in Jenkins. You can go and do it graphically, just click the remove step button on the steps that you want to remove, and save the result. Now you've got a saved version of what you want. Then, if you go into the Jenkins folder, which is the home directory of the user that you're running under, there is a .jenkins folder underneath there. And then in the jobs folder underneath there, and then find the job that you're looking for, there is a file called config.xml. And that's the file that describes the job as you view it within the UI. If you copy that config.xml file into the Jenkins libraries custom folder within your toolkit, and then just rename it to the name of the product version that you wish to replace with that XML file. If you do that, then you have replaced the library with a custom version. So this is that process in action. So on the left-hand side here, we see we've got stop cluster, stop node, stop DMGR, and on the right-hand side, we've removed those and we're starting the process at install IM and then going on to install IHS. So we've removed those steps from the XML. And this is the moving over the file here. So this is home Talos Jenkins jobs, build WebSphere cell, and underneath there is a config XML file. And we're just copying that config XML file over to the toolkits, WAS, orchestration, Jenkins, libraries, custom folder, and renaming it to build WAS cell library. So toolkits break down into a number of different sections, which one of which is activities. So activities are scripts that execute a single atomic activity. So whether it's start DMGR, install cluster, create profile, add node, those things, we have created the scripts and we're responsible for maintaining them, and they are, as far as we can tell, the perfect way of doing it. So those are held inside the toolkit along with some corresponding documentation that describes how it's used. And they can only be executed by Talos. Activities are written in Groovy. Groovy is syntactically quite close to Java, but it's a little different. It's interpreted rather than compiled. So you don't need to compile it into bytecode to run it. You just run it as scripting language that you can edit on the fly. It's quite easy to learn. It's a bit more forgiving than Java in terms of how it requires the application to be structured, and it's also quite fast. So an activity is broken down into a few sections. Firstly, the public class, which is named the same as the activity name. So in this instance, it's start DMGR. Now the class has to implement the interface iProcess script runner. That gives it the structure of a script runner process. The execute method is the method that actually executes the code. Params contains any parameters arguments that are passed in to the call from the command line that's executed. And job result is something that needs to be returned to indicate whether the process result is a pass or a fail. So the topology is where you get all the information about your cell. So you need a way within activities to be able to navigate that topology. For example, you might want to list all the nodes in your topology, cycle over your nodes. So in order to create truly generic activities, you need to use that those methods of navigating that topology. The topology file is held in the data directory of Talos under middleware. Um, and then there's a topology directory underneath your unique environment middleware combination. And the file is called topology.json. And it looks like this. So a topology is made up of nested JSON elements. The root is one element, and it contains some properties, some attributes, and some children. And all of those in the middle are children of that root element. And the children are in themselves elements, which also have the same structure of properties, attributes, and children. So there are calls you can make within Talos to be able to navigate that topology and extract any content you need just by uh, searching, particular a particular way down the topology, a particular route through the topology. So let's have a look at an example of navigating the topology. So this is the topology on the left-hand side and the script to do it on the right-hand side. So here we've got this first line that's underlined here, topology element top lm is params.getTopology. Now that's just going to get the whole thing. It's going to get the whole topology here. And if we get that top element, the top lm, and we find attribute was username on there, then we'll bring back the highlighted on the left-hand side, was username is was admin. So we find the attribute value for the level that we're at in the topology. And again, was password, that will bring back the was password from the topology. And once again, was home, that will return the was home location. Now, if we do a list, a top LM, find children by role deployment manager, it will get every child which has the role type deployment manager and return that as a list of topology elements. We can then cycle through those topology elements and assign, in this instance, there is only one DMGR element, so we're just going to set that to child. We're going to set that DMGR LM variable to child. If there was more, for example, we're finding children by role node, there might be 6 or 7 that came back, and so we could do what we needed to do within that loop. So now we have that DMGR element, we can do a find attribute value there on SOAPport, and you should see that the SOAPport we're finding there is 8879. And so now we're doing the same thing again, but we're finding a specific child by a name. So the name that we're looking for is in the variable node. So node is we've passed in as a parameter, and we've set that to a string, and then we're looking from the top LM and we're doing find child by name, node name, and that's going to return the single topology element that that deals with that node. And then we can do a find attribute value on that for profile home and for profile name. So toolkits follow the same pattern as orchestration libraries in offering you a product location and a custom location. The product location is where tech data have developed to the perfect, the ideal set of scripts as far as we're concerned. But custom is a place where you can augment your own or create your own from scratch. So those files are held in toolkit, the toolkit location slash template slash product. And as with any other items, there is a custom folder where you could insert your own and overwrite the custom ones. So this is an example of a template. This is the Webster Application Server 855 Fixpack template. So notice the tokens here. These tokens will be replaced um, during the process of installing. And the token replacement here is happening with the tokens.put commands here. So if you wanted to implement your own, there are features within Talos activities to be able to replace your own template files for any custom activities that you want to write. So this part at the end here is the generation of the template that is actually going to be used by the process. And this is it being executed and the tokens being passed in into the replace tokens method. So for every activity, there's a corresponding documentation file. And the documentation file contains instructions on how to use it. And we store them in a very specific format. So we name the file the same as we name the activity file, just with a .json at the end in the document location. And we structure it in a very specific way. So probably the best way is just to copy an existing one and modify it accordingly. So this is essentially how it breaks down. There is a name, a description, the toolkit it belongs to, whether it's a product or a custom implementation, whether it's a configuration type activity or a process type activity, and then a list of required arguments, related activities, and prerequisites. And these elements will all be used within the Talos UI to display that information in a nice, easy to use, consumable way.